I'll not be speaking about elements which are already there in the ICMR guidelines or which are already well known. So I'll be highlighting some of the aspects which are new in NDCT rules, particularly something called academic clinical trials. So, I put this as a series of questions. What do you think is the difference between a new drug and an investigational new drug? So these are some specific points which are important in the Indian context. So in India, from the time of first marketing of a pharmaceutical product, which may be a single pure molecule, which may be a biological product, which is not a single chemical molecule, or which may be a phytopharmaceutical product, a plant-derived product, when it is marketed for the first time by any agency. Agency can be a company, for-profit company, agency can be an institution, or agency can also be an individual. From the time of first marketing till 4 years, it would be considered as a new drug. Okay, it would be considered as a new drug. Now, a drug which is under clinical trial or other kinds of clinical research, but has not yet received a marketing approval, that is an investigational new drug, IND. So new drug means marketed and not yet completed 4 years. Investigational new drug means a drug under investigation but not yet marketed. However, an old drug can also become a new drug. How? Right, very good. If a drug approved from one indication is now sought to be used in another indication, so for that another indication, it will become a new drug. If a drug is already approved in one dosage form, now you want to use it in another dosage form. So a product has been approved as an injection. Now you want to market an oral tablet form of that. Again, the tablet will become a new drug. A drug which is already approved, but you now want to use it in a new dosage. Maybe higher than the earlier dosage or earlier than dosage. So some 15-20 years back, when our drug regulator used to approve a drug, it just approved the molecule. But now it is not only the molecule, the indication and the broad dosage which is being route of administration and dosage which is being approved, like in the other developed countries. New disease means new indication. So new indication, new route of administration, new dose, new dosage form, new combination. Two drugs already approved separately. Now you want to use them in a fixed dose combination. A product which is in the nature of one, a vaccine, two, a recombinant DNA product, three, a stem cell derived product, four, a genetically modified organism, and five, monoclonal antibody. These products will always be considered as new drugs. So if somebody is bringing in another copy of that, they are actually in the area of new drugs. So recombinant DNA products, biologically derived products such as monoclonal antibodies, genetically modified organisms, stem cell derived products, and vaccines. They are forever new drugs. So what is a similar biologic? So now we have a lot of biologically derived products. So products derived from living systems. Typical example being monoclonal antibodies. So as time goes on, you'll be hearing more and more about monoclonal antibodies. So if one antibody is already there, either in the Indian market or in a foreign market, and somebody in India wants to bring the same product, that means for the same indication, then it could be called a similar biologic. Now, no two biological products are exactly identical. They can never be exactly identical. Their primary amino acid sequence may be the same, but there may be differences in tertiary structure and post-translational modification. So, no two biological products, unless they are produced by very much identical processing systems, they are not likely to be same. So, the term used is similar. So, how long a new drug is considered to be a new drug? 4 years, with the exceptions. Vaccines, recombinant DNA products, genetically modified organisms, stem cell derived products, other biologically derived products, they are forever new. What is an orphan drug? Orphan mane ki onath, ma baba nei. No. Orphan drug means a drug for which the demand is likely to be low. Demand is likely to be low. For instance, drug for an uncommon disease. Not many people are likely to use the drug. So you are not going to have a large market for the drug. So you don't have an incentive for spending money on developing the drug. So in India, the law has defined that if the estimated patient base is less than 5 lakhs, then the product would be treated as an orphan drug. Okay. There are policy implications of this. What is a clinical trial? We have already discussed. Any clinical study which is not in the nature of a clinical trial would be a non-interventional or observational study. Okay. Again, policy implications. If it falls in the category of clinical trials, then it will have to follow ICMR guidelines as well as new drug clinical trial rules. If it is not a clinical trial, it needs to follow only the ICMR guidelines, not the clinical trial provisions under NDCT. Whether permission is required from the Central Licensing Authority for conduct of a clinical trial or a BAB study in India. What do you think? Is permission required? All cases? সব কিছুর জন্য দিল্লি ছুটতে হলে তো মুশকিল। If you are studying a product which has never been marketed in India, okay, whatever be the indication, maybe only an antiseptic cream, but if it has never been marketed in India, you require permission. Or if it falls in the definition of a new drug, that means any vaccine, even if that vaccine is that type of vaccine is already being marketed, will require permission from Central Licensing Authority. Who can apply for grant of permission? Individual, academic institution, commercial body, any other organization. But the rules are same for everybody. Whether clinical study of a drug not covered under definition of a new drug in human being requires permission from Central Licensing Authority. No. However, it is said that if the administrative authority of the trial site or the ethics committee in the trial site has any confusion of whether this is going to fall under the category of a new drug or not, you have to apply to the central licensing authority, or the ethics committee will write to the central licensing authority. If the central licensing authority has any objection, they will let you know within 30 working days. If not, you can go ahead without their permission, explicit permission. Whether phase 1 study of a new drug discovered or developed outside India can be permitted to be conducted in India. What do you think? ইন্ডিয়াতে যে ড্রাগ ডেভেলপড হচ্ছে, অফকোর্স ইন্ডিয়াতে তো তাকে ডেভেলপের পারমিশন দিতেই হবে। What about a drug not being developed in India? Will you allow a phase 1 study? To put it bluntly, will you allow Indians to become guinea pigs, the first guinea pigs? So normally, central licensing authority will not allow. Phase 1 study will have to be done in the country of origin. But phase 2 onwards, studies can be done in India. Once a permission is given, permission is not indefinite, it's going to remain valid for 2 years. So you have to utilize that permission within 2 years. Whether permission required from CLA to conduct observation non-intervention study of a new drug? If it falls in the category of a new drug, okay, and if there is element of risk involved, then permission is required. So if any confusion, seek permission. Okay, new drug, if it falls under the definition of a new drug. Now, a new thing has come in and which has been made mandatory under Indian law is that you have to register clinical trials. Once you call a project a clinical trial, you have to register it. Doesn't matter what kind or what setting. Even if it is a postgraduate student doing a thesis project, if it's a clinical trial, it has to be registered. Where to register? Register it with CTRI, Clinical Trial Registry India. Okay. A global clinical trial, Indian arm also has to be registered in India. Ethics committee permission is mandatory for registering a trial. A trial not permitted by the ethics committee will not be registered. Whether IC approval is mandatory to initiate a trial? Yes. Is IC approval required for conducting trial at a site? Okay. So principal investigator belongs to one institution. He has taken permission, but he proposes to do the study in BCD sites. Site A, his own site has already given permission. Does he require additional ethics permission at BCD? Yes. If the ethics committee exists at BCD, then he'll require permission for BCD separately. In absence of local ethics committee, which ethics committee can approve a trial? We have already said one within a radius of 50 kilometers. And whether the approval of the ethics committee should be intimated to CLA? Yes, if you are taking permission from the CLA to conduct a trial. Approval or disapproval of the ethics committee has to be communicated to the central licensing authority. Now, the very special thing in new drugs clinical trials, which has sorted out the gray area, is what about people who are interested in doing trials but not sponsored trials? Nobody separately is funding them. No company is giving the money. So NDCT has defined a category called academic clinical trial. Okay. So what is the meaning of an academic clinical trial? Here the trial is not being sponsored by a commercial entity. It is being done by an individual, an academic institution, or some other organization, but not a commercial company. Okay. The study cannot be done with an unapproved drug or a new drug. Academic clinical trials cannot use unapproved drug or a new drug. However, they can try out new indication, new dose, new route of an approved drug. And third, the data generated from this trial cannot be used for seeking marketing approvals from CDSCO or for advertisement purposes. Okay. So what was happening in India, some of the companies were asking people in faculty in medical colleges to study products for them without spending a lot of money. Okay, I'll give you some money, you do the study as your study and report and share the data with them. So this has put a stop to that practice. If you do an academic clinical trial, you have some advantages, some leeways, but the data will be used solely for academic purposes. It cannot be used for marketing purposes or promotional purposes. Okay. That's it. Whether permission is required from DCGI for the conduct of an academic clinical trial? No. It is the local ethics committee which will approve. But if the ethics committee is in a doubt, they can write to the central licensing authority. Whether compensation, medical management in case of injury or death of trial subject is applicable in case of academic clinical trial. Here NDCT has done a very clever thing. It has not directly said yes or no. What it has said is basically follow the prevailing ICMR guidelines. Okay. They said follow the guidelines of the Indian Council of Medical Research or other prevailing guidelines. And the problem is the ICMR guidelines compensation, they have not made a distinction between sponsored or academic or non-academic trials. So what in essence is that even if you are doing a postgraduate thesis work and your patient suffers a serious adverse event, you are liable to pay compensation. Medical management, of course, you can provide in a medical college. But what about the compensation? So there is no mechanism for compensation. You cannot take insurance. Okay. Because the premium would be huge. So that remains a gray area. So academic trials are not done in risky areas where there is real danger of patients suffering serious adverse events. Okay. Some institutes in India have tried to work around this problem by developing corpus institutional funds to pay compensation. One example is GCP Pondicherry, another example is St. John's Medical College, Bangalore, but most institutions do not have this mechanism. Now, the last two aspects, post-trial access. Suppose a patient is on a clinical trial, is doing really well. Trial is of a new drug, which is not yet marketed in India. Now, the trial will come to an end one day. So, you have to stop the drug and the patient will deteriorate. The patient will come, investigator ke bolbe koi amar oshud ta din, bola ar oshud pawa jabe na, bari jao. Is that ethical? Can you prescribe the medicine for him? No way. Medicine is not available in the market. So this is a real problematic issue. It's called the issue of post-trial access. So what do you think can be done? Alternative থাকলে ভালো, যদি না থাকে
actually happened with one of our Tata Cancer Institute. They did a trial with the immunotherapy Cost was around 40 lakhs per month. Because he was a substitute client of railways, so he came back to us. But unfortunately, we could not provide him the medicine also. This was a question I wanted to ask, but anyway, we have let.
So it's a post-trial access. What do you think? Post-trial access, the request has to originate from the investigator because the investigator will be speaking from the medical point of view. So if there is a genuine need and a genuine risk that if the trial medication is stopped, then the patient will deteriorate or the patient's life is at risk. So the investigator will make a request for post-trial access to the sponsor. Ethics committee has to concur. And this information, copy of this request will also be sent to the Central Licensing Authority. They should not have any objection either. So if these three parties concur, then the sponsor would be requested to provide post-trial access. So usually on humanitarian grounds, the sponsor will provide post-trial access for some time, but they cannot provide indefinitely. One is from their own issue and the second is the drug is not marketed. So you cannot indefinitely prescribe an unlicensed drug to a patient. In future, it may be marketed or may not be marketed, or it may be marketed, as sir is saying, all the biologics or cancers are cost like this, all these monoclonal antibodies. Nobody is interested in making simple cytotoxic drugs for cancer. They don't make much money. So only hear about therapies costing in lakhs and crores. Okay. So how long post-trial access should be provided? It is undecided as now, but generally it is considered that for 6 months, post-trial access on humanitarian grounds is provided by most sponsors. So post-marketing surveillance study or phase 4 clinical trials, as we have said in the morning, anything which comes after marketing, and the rules and regulations applicable for clinical trials are also applicable for phase 4 clinical trials. And the last is unmet medical need. So what do you mean by unmet medical need? So when COVID happened, we had an unmet medical need. So any situation in which you don't have effective diagnostic or therapeutic options, that's an unmet medical need. If you don't have a medicine in your country, can you import it from another country and use it on Indian patients? That has to be approved in the country of origin. If it is in trial in the country of origin, you cannot import it. If it is approved in the country of origin, but not approved in India, then you can apply for importing it to the Central Licensing Authority on a named patient basis. You cannot just import certain amount of the drug and use it on different patients because the drug is not approved in India yet. So on a named patient basis, you can import the drug. Who can import? A private individual or a private hospital cannot import. Only a government institution can import. So a private hospital has to approach the government machinery, the superintendent or the head of the government institution. There's a particular form they will apply to the Central Licensing Authority. The Central Licensing Authority gives a NOC, then they can contact the manufacturer or supplier in the foreign country and get the drug from them, not an indefinite quantity. Usually at one go, 100 days worth of medicine, 100 doses of the medicine. But the government authority's responsibility is not only just writing the request, they have to take the responsibility of storing the drug also, using the pharmacy mechanism in the hospital. And from that, they have to dispense it to the named patient. If the drug is not utilized or if the stock is expired, then they have to destroy it following the government machinery for destruction of expired stock. So these are the provisions, but earlier there were no such provisions. And this thing. So what is the validity period such approval? This validity period normally is once it is approved, you have to import within 6 months. And the stock records have to be maintained by the government system. So with this, I'll conclude my presentation on the guidelines. Okay.